Would it be your belief that maybe by using this particular methodology that you might find out that programs can maybe doing the same thing, and we get duplication of services and things of that nature, and perhaps we might be able to save money and reduce government in the state of Arkansas?
Yes. What an idea. Yes. I think that's very much what I'm looking at doing. One of the things I think is a concern is we've sent our folks off to Washington and told them to cut spending. Well, one of the things that's going to happen as we cut spending is that some of these programs that we have here in the state of Arkansas that are receiving federal money are going to be hit by some of those reductions. And one of the things I think we have to make sure is that when automatically people just say to us, well, we've got to use state money to make up the difference for the federal money that we're getting, that we're not doing that we have some good information on the viability of those programs and what their results are, to ensure that we don't just put state money into some of those programs and maybe we don't need them. And I think you've all heard 47 of job training programs in the United States. Most of those programs are right here. It's federal money, but it's still our taxpayer dollars, whether it's coming from this big cloud in the sky, the federal government, or our taxpayer dollars here. So there are any number of those same types of things in state government.
Yeah, it's like 75 different war on poverty programs that equal out to over $900 billion, almost $1 trillion a year here in the United States. And how much is that money comes here to the state of Arkansas?
A lot.
And that's money that we've sent to Washington that comes back here, and I'm not going to disagree with that. However, a $16 trillion debt tells us that, and $10 trillion of it owed by the American public, that perhaps we need to stop some of that.
Well, and everybody feels like everything that they're involved in is very important, and it's important to them. But I think we have to really start looking. We scream a lot about the federal government doing it, but I think we have to do that here in the state, and there's a certain complacency because we do have the revenue stabilization law that everything is just fine and we have a balanced budget, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we're doing what we ought to be doing with the resources. And I think that's up to the legislature. Doesn't really have any organization that is looking out for their side to help them make those better decisions. The executive branch has all of that, and they'll be preparing their budgets in the next for the February session coming up very soon. They'll start sending those budget requests to the governor's office, and then they'll make those decisions about how much that agency should grow or whether it shouldn't grow at all. So I think those are the kinds of things that the legislature needs to have a better understanding and be able to ask the right questions and not just automatically vote an appropriation. Or, as in this last case, where all of a sudden we said, no, we're not voting for that. Mm-hmm. And that really shocked people because that never happened before.
Okay, we'll take a break. It's the Dave Elswick Show, 220. When we come back, and Jane, I'll have you talk about this, and that being, how can you be sure that the bureaucrats are playing straight with you? We'll talk about that on the Dave Elswick Show.
Remember, wherever you are, you can know what's happening in Arkansas on KARNNewsRadio.com.
.25, Dave Elswick Show, KARN. State Representative Jane English is here and has announced that she will seek the seat in the Senate, the state Senate in District 34, coming up next year in 2012 in the election. And that will leave one of the House seats vacant, but she says she thinks there's a couple of really good candidates out there that are looking at that. We've been talking about some of the things that she would like to see happen as a state senator, and I left her with a question to ponder, and that was, when you sit down at these budgetary meetings early on in the year before the session gets underway, and all these different people sit down in front of you all over in the Big Mac building, and say, we spend this much money here and that much money there, and here a dollar, there a dollar, everywhere a dollar. How do you know that you're getting what you're getting is the straight savvy that you need to make a decision from the bureaucrats?
You really don't. You just have to go on their budget request, which has gone through the governor's office, and they're pretty, budget request pretty simple. It just basically has how much money they're going to spend for salaries, how much for benefits, how much for travel, how much for conferences, and a few other little things, and where the money comes from, whether it's federal or state money, and then it's sort of up to, I think that people figure that the governor has pretty much gone through the budget and determined how he wants the money to be spent and how it will be spent in each agency, and that's what we're supposed to go along with.
All right. David?
Yeah, I'm curious. Of course, I know it's been with this recent debt crisis and all that, or quote-unquote debt crisis this last time. This is a grand deal they made, and, it's been brought to light in Washington. But as far as the state level, I'm not real familiar with, you hear a lot about this baseline budgeting, how there's always an increase, and any cut they talk about is actually just a slowdown in growth. How does that work as far as the budgeting in the state, as far as each agency having to justify? Is there always an increase, or do you have to justify how much is going to be spent or how much that agency is going to get, or how does it work in correlation to, I keep spilling water here,
right.
Second time. How does that work in correlation to, contrasting to the federal government?
Because what happens here versus what happens with the federal government is that there is a projection of the revenue that's going to be coming in. We pretty much know where we are all the time, and you're looking, the Department of Finance and Administration and the governor are looking at what those projected numbers might be, and they usually come out around in November. They can see maybe there's a plan for growth of 1 or 2%, whatever. And then the governor pretty much decides and tells the agencies how much they can increase their budgets or decrease their budgets, whatever the case may be.
Okay. So it's not automatic increases like you think of when you hear this talk about baseline budgeting.
No, and in a lot of cases that pretty much is based. Some agencies will need a little more money and some agencies will need a little bit less, but it's never huge. And I think there was... when we started looking at the prison reform, there were some additional costs that were going to need to be transferred around with the Bureau of Prisons and Community Corrections and some other types of things like that.
Well, do you have this, what I think is just insane, you hear about in government at the federal level, is they're trying to spend at the end of the year as much as they can so they can justify why they need additional dollars. And you hear about these stories about buying, pieces of furniture, coffee pots, or whatever, just so they can spend the money so they can prove that they need it next year.
That happens here.
Yeah, it's not good.
It's I think most agencies try and plan up to how much, but usually there's always a place at the end of the fiscal year where there's going to be money left over and people want to spend it. I think we'd be a better job giving it back.
Absolutely.
Put it in a rainy day fund, doing something else with it. But it's no different than the federal government. Then if you didn't spend it, you don't need it. Well, to me that's wrong.
I got about 30 seconds here. How big of a rainy day fund do you believe that the state needs?
I honestly don't know. I don't have a good feeling for that. We've been very fortunate that we have not had any major tragedies in the state, huge things that we've had to take care of. But I think probably if the whole bottom fell out of the United States of America, which I don't see transpiring either, you probably don't need more than maybe $15-20 million, and that would cover up an awful lot of things. But the governor, I'm sure, had to use some money when they had the big floods down around Greenwood. An terrible thing that happened, and there were some extra required costs that went into that, and he needs to have some money for that. I don't begrudge that at all. It's when you spend money for some little odd thing that's somebody's pet project that would be a problem for me. But
all right. Well, let's get to the news. When we come back, we'll continue to talk with Jane here on the Dave Elswick Show. State Representative Jane English announcing she'll seek the District 34 Senate seat come 2012. Right now, your news, here is Jack Heinrichs. 2:37, Dave Elswick Show. Don't forget that all the rest of this week, our KARN News broadcast at the bottom of the hour will include remembrances of 9/11 10 years later. We want to keep in your mind that you should continue to remember 9/11. We'll have two programs on Sunday you won't want to miss. Starting at 7 a.m., we'll go live with ABC News and go to Ground Zero in New York City, and we will carry that observance from beginning to end. And then following that, which should end right around 10 o'clock, we'll have a special perspective. That's a show by ABC with correspondent Sherry Preston, who you hear here on the show from time to time, and all of that will focus exclusively on the 10-year anniversary of the 9/11 terror attacks. And we highly, as we are trying to remember 9/11, we want you to remember 9/11, and we highly recommend that you fly your flag this Sunday in remembrance of all the people who died 10 years ago. I tell Scott, it doesn't seem possible to me. It's been a decade since that has happened. And America has changed in that decade because of what happened. And we just want to take as much part as we can in this here on KARN. Scott and I were hoping to go to New York City, but they weren't even going to let us get within, I think, 5 blocks is what they said. We could broadcast, but we'd be 5 blocks away. Well, there's no reason to go and broadcast if you can't even see what's happening. So we're going to do it with ABC. They've already covered everything with ABC and be able to carry it live with them. Also tonight, don't forget at 6 o'clock, the President's economic address to a joint Chamber of Commerce. It starts at 6 p.m. tonight. They're saying his speech is supposed to be 45 minutes long. You know, I can give you a jobs program in 10 minutes. I'm just telling you, I can do it. Get ready. It's going to be a litany of new programs. I'm just telling you. By the way, Congressman Griffin and Senator Bozeman will be talking to me here at the end, towards the end of the show, in the 4 and the 5 o'clock hour. No, it's just during the 4 o'clock hour, Scott? Okay, during the 4 o'clock hour, about what they're kind of expecting to hear from the president. I mean, the Republicans have already come out with their job proposals now as well. Let's get back to local politics.